Welcome to Raw Painting. In this video series, we're just going to be painting miniatures. You're going to get a bird's eye view of me just painting miniatures. It's raw, uncut. We're going to post it as it's recorded, so there's never any telling what's going to be said. If you like watching miniatures being painted, if you've got tips, tricks you want to pick up, if you want to add any content in the comments below, I'll be happy to reply to them. And let's just jump in and paint some miniatures. All right, I've got my palette set up. Actually switched chairs. We're getting so close on finishing this frost giant. So close. Finish this bad boy out with the gold highlights on the helmet, and then finish out the accessories that'll go on his back. This is Reaper's amber gold that we're doing. A couple of thin layers. Because I like the paint to be nice and thin to build up the colors. So it'll take a little bit, but that's okay because that gives us time to then work on the pack and accessories that we have for the back. And if you've been following this progress since we started on Facebook Live, you've seen this bad boy come from a flat dark gray to what it is currently. Long time, a lot of process, so many layers of paint, so many layers of paint. If you have been following along, I appreciate it. Hope that you've enjoyed. Hope I've been somewhat entertaining. I'm gonna keep this series going that I'm calling Raw. And if you're just joining us now, we are going to be painting a dragon next. Blightfang the dragon. Going to be painting him as a white dragon. I switched chairs so my angle is a little bit different. I have not perfected this videoing, so this is an ongoing process that we're going to figure out together. And I do need to add my little disclaimer that although the minis you'll see being painted currently are both Reaper minis, the Frost Giant Warrior and then Blightfang. Of course, we did a stone golem and a flesh golem Reaper is not a sponsor, so they have not paid me to paint these minis. I love the minis. Great sculpts. Love the company. And if I say that they're my preferred miniature company, you can take me at my word, because I am not being paid to say that. Reaper has a upcoming virtual expo coming up in March. If you're interested in miniature painting community, you'll have to check it out on reapermini.com. I'm going to be attending. I have offered to do a couple of panels or classes or courses or something regarding basing of minis. Of course, you'll be getting a sneak peek of that here on Raw, because while we're painting our dragon, we're going to be basing this frost giant. So you'll see how I do my basing right here. So these are different color palettes that I'm using for the rope as opposed to the gold. I apologize, I got a little bit of the handshakes today. But that's okay, I'm going to keep pressing forward. A lot of times if I have the shakes, I will not paint because I don't want to make any mistakes. But this miniature is just for me and my own use. So if I do make a mistake, I'm not going to be overly critical on myself, because it's just got to be good enough to pass muster at my own table. And if my players are happy with the results, that's all I can ask for. For my players on my campaigns, if I'm running them, I actually like to paint their minis. I've got a different video series on the same channel, on my channel, that I've called Mini Mastery. Excuse me. And in that video series, I am painting my newest campaign's players' miniatures that they'll be gifted. And just going step by step, one by one, we're going to paint the whole adventuring party. So if you haven't seen any of them, check them out. Of course, we're new to the whole video platform, so I will be the first to tell you they are not professional quality. They start out rough, but they're getting better and better each time we have a week go past. So the schedule that we're keeping is we want to launch these raw videos every Saturday evening. And then the mini mastery, Painting the Adventurers, we're trying to launch every Sunday. We've been good so far about keeping up with the schedule. I hope you would agree. And then on Mondays, we launch a video, or we release a video called Aiding Your Game. That's all about tabletop role-playing help, tips, tricks, commentary, and again, still early development for us. We've been doing them a bit, but it was never our intention to do a whole ton. With COVID, when COVID hit, we had to rethink our business plan. We were not able to open our game center, so we're focusing more on digital and online content than what we previously had thought about. So it's evolving, it's growing, it's changing. But until we get to a point where we feel we can safely, smartly, and profitably open our game center, we're just going to be focusing on, of course, product creation and development, as well as, there we go, as well as video. So you can see just a dull yellow. See a little bit of area. I want to touch up just a hair. The rope is definitely a different yellow than what we've done on the gold. There we go. Now that kind of blends in a little bit with that wood, the lightest colors on the wood, but that's okay. Remember, that's the base coat. That's the deepest color on that pack. Let's go back into some golds. Of course, we've got these very thin gold colors. Possibly a little too thin. I may go back to the bottles and add some more to my wet palette, just because this layer here is so thin, water thin, that the coverage is not quite as good as I was hoping for. Of course, I do love some thin paints, but for this base layer, coverage is definitely an important factor, so we can move on to the next layers. And I don't want these videos to be too long. I want them to be able to be consumed in a decent amount of time. So we'll see. We may take a station break after we get this on and get some fresh coffee, use the restroom, and then get back to it. With this base layer of this gold, we're going to be doing lots of layers on top of it to really make it sing. So coverage is definitely important on this layer. And just following the contour lines. This goes up and around into this horn holder. I'm sure it's got a name, but I don't know what it is. If you know what it is, pop it in the comments and educate me. nothing wrong with getting some education. I try to be a sponge, learn as much as I can. Yeah, this amber gold just came out so thin. I thinned it a little too much. My fear is that I will attempt to apply it too quickly and end up damaging the quality of the paint job, which I don't want. And again, this is just for my own tabletop use. This is not a commission. This is not something that I'm going to be selling or entering into a contest or displaying in any way, shape, or form. But I still want a good paint job on it. Looks like I got just a hair of that yellow there on the helmet. That's not good. Oh, that's from the horn, actually. From painting the horn, I can tell. I'm going to dull that down a little bit. Wowzer, because I had sealed that in between and not caught it, that could be a little bit of a challenge. So, one of the things about mini painting is finding out that you've made some errors. I'm going to go in with just a little bit of thin gray to cover that up a little bit. Try to blend that into the helmet a little bit. Let's see how that does. We'll let that dry. Let's go back to the rope for a minute. So we started out with that deep yellow. Now we are going to go through and just lightly brush on. So this is almost dry brushing. A touch lighter color. This is going to start giving us tone of a more yellow. So separate that from the wood tones a little bit more. And these paints here, you'll be able to tell, are not quite as thinned as those golds were that we're using on the helmet, which is what we want. A little bit thicker, opaque, heavier coverage for this. Again, this is just adding a lighter tone. And this is where it's going to start paying off, is where the ropes kind of overlap each other. This is almost like Celtic knots, to where the one that's on top will be a touch lighter in tone than the ones that go beneath them or, below them. So it starts to give us dimension. And this is closer in color to that base color than what we'll end up with. Again, it's because we want to separate in tone what overlaps what. So the darker tone will indicate going under, and the lighter tone will indicate going over. And because we're using a pretty soft touch with thicker paint, some of the areas you'll actually see will have those braided separations. So kind of like a dry brush technique. But you're starting to be able to see the areas where rope goes under and over each other. And then carrying on what we do, doing some higher tone and a little bit less than the previous layer. Onto a more truer yellow. This one we have this one going over and this one going under. So I'm not going to go as close on that one that's going under as I did with the previous color. And this one just barely because it's going under. This one's going over. I try not to touch those areas, but it's so challenging with this little accessory bit. So challenging. Sometimes you just can't help it. I mean, you can use a handle. I know a lot of the other painters out there who will be watching this will be cursing me for not using a handle. This little bit here, I'm not too worried about. Again, on my handle, I've got so many projects going at the same time that I don't have a free handle. So we're really being able to tell that that's rope there. And I'm actually thinking, let's go ahead and just finish out this rope. I'm kind of feeling that. I've got one more layer on the rope, and that's it. And for that, I'm going to be focusing on the highest points. And I don't know how well this is going to show up in the camera. I really don't know. But because it's pretty subtle, I went with where the highest point was on the chest. So similar to what we did with the frame where the brightest point light is shining. And then I'm doing the corners anywhere it's overlapping anywhere you're seeing, like rope tension. And then overlapping pieces, wherever it overlaps from one to the other, we'll get this lighter coat. And this is the same color that we had used just previously, with just a touch of an even lighter shade of yellow. So it's super subtle in its appearance on this rope. But when you see it in person, it really stands out more. And then one more layer on the highest point. And the more you paint, the more opaque it gets. And just like that, that chest now is done. It needs sealed, and then I can focus on this pack. And then we can attach it and be done with that little accessory piece. Let's get back into the gold here. And these, this one here, I think I thinned down just a little too much because we're on coat number 3 here. And we still don't have a whole ton of opacity. You're able to see the previous layers shining through it. I'm debating, do I go back to the bottle and re-pour some paint so that I have a new starting point? Or do I just continue to layer? Oh, the challenges of miniature painting. How funny is it that that's a challenge? I mean, think about some of the challenges that people face in their lives. I'm pretty blessed, I have to say, having to decide if I want to re-pour some paint. It's a pretty lucky challenge that I have. Pretty blessed in my life. Boy, I gotta say, this fellow was pretty fun to paint. For a couple of aspects. One, just because it's a great sculpt, but I additionally just have been able to learn quite a bit about filming miniature painting. I'm still learning a lot to this moment, as far as angles, lighting, keeping things in frame, which I'm still working on. Trying to make sure that it's not boring for anybody who's watching. Not to play music. Don't play music unless you have the copyrights for it or it's free use. I learned that lesson. Got part of the this mini painting had to get taken down because I was jamming to some music. Normally when I'm painting, just, personal painting, I do jam to different music, so that was a learning lesson for me that you can't And I should have known better because as an artist, copyright is very important. For me, all right, we'll let that dry, and as that's drying, I am actually going to go back to the bottle and give it a good shake up and put some more on my palette. This one's just so thin. It's taking a whole lot. While that's drying, let's move this little bit out. Like I said, I gotta seal that. Show you where I'm at on an older one. So this is a Fire Giant that I had processed. I'm just working on the base now, starting the base. You can see it's super lined and everything. That's because it's so massive. I just had to lay down some paint to start getting some definition. So I've got to go in and work on that and get that all finished up. Of course, as we're painting the dragon, we're going to be basing this fellow here. I've already got a plan of how I want to base him out, trudging through the snow on a kind of tundra feel. Really looking forward to getting that fellow done. And the dragon. I've got so many ideas in my head on this dragon. I'm super excited to get started on him. But I also have to pace myself because I don't want to rush this one right at the end. I don't want this one to have big, huge errors at the very last bit. I didn't think about it until after I had started painting, but for the end of the video, we're actually going to editing that I will end up doing, which goes against what we're supposed to be doing on raw, but I'm going to put an image of an unpainted, this unpainted figure next to the final figure, and that way we can see the progress that we've taken on this wonderful painting journey. And we'll give a dedication and the whole 9 yards. We'll make it fun and kind of corny at the same time, maybe. Maybe we'll name the mini at that point. Something just kind of different and corny. Different and corny. So you can see here I'm using a little bit heavier paint. Of course, I just added some out of the bottle to my palette and mixed it into the previous layer that I had. I think I may be getting just a little too overcritical on this fine fellow, because after this base coat is done, we're going to be doing a wash anyhow, so maybe I'm being a little too critical. You're always your own worst critic. Wow, what a great sculpt. Just started launching some of our adventures on DM's Guild. We're doing one a month to start. I don't know if that's too many, not enough. I'm still doing a little bit of research on it. But we've got one set to launch January 1st. We've got one live currently, one set to launch January 1st. And two others already prepped and waiting their launch days. You can tell that color that we're ending with is very similar to what we've got in the beard. You may worry about that kind of blending too much. Once this layer dries, we're going to be adding in a wash to darken it up and then selectively highlighting back. So tonally it looks flat and kind of blends in with the beard now. That will change. I promise you that will change. But overall, I think that's pretty good coverage there. We just got to wait for it to dry. We don't want to put our wash on a wet layer and remove any of that. We've got the chest done. Of course, I've got to go through and seal it because I will have to touch it as I'm painting the pack. So I'm not going to be able to do the pack yet. And I'm not going to edit the video. So this is that time we're going to watch some paint dry. Maybe we'll do like a contest. I know we don't have a lot of subscribers and followers yet, but maybe we'll do a contest. If you're watching this and want to participate in a contest, comment below with your favorite monstrous race from D&D that is a giant. So whatever your favorite giant monster is for D&D, put it in the comments below, and I will reach out to one person at random. We're going to run this through the end of February. So you've got until the end of February to put a comment in. Mark it through and I will send you a Reaper miniature. Mark down your thoughts and I will get a Reaper miniature, a Bones Reaper miniature on your way. So comment below after you hit that subscribe button, of course. And still a little damp. That's okay. Well, we'll just wait. We will just wait. And we'll check how those bases are. Pretty decent coverage on those bases. Of course, we'll seal those up at the same time we seal the chest. And then we'll be able to put some different flocking and basing materials on here. Because they're monstrous, I don't know, I want to go too much. So this one here, a fun story. The golem itself is in shades of grays for the stone, but I wanted it to really stand out from the base, so I decided to do the browns for the earth rather than grays. A lot of times I stick with the grays for kind of more stone work, but I figured it would really make him stand out, and I think it does a good job. I mean, I really think that fellow there from his base stands out well. Thought about painting his eyes so they were like glowy, but again, this is just one for my own tabletop use. I'm not super worried about those types of details, so I didn't at this point, but who knows, maybe it's something I will do at some point. Let me know your thoughts if you would like to see that stone golem with glowing eyes. Excuse me. All right, let's check the progress here. And pretty dry. It looks pretty good. So I'm going to prep up my wash. I've already got the brown on the wet palette, but because I want this to be a wash, I have to thin it down even more. Ooh, and even there, it's a little heavy. So tamp out that brush and go back through. Because this is a wash, we want it to be thin and not completely coat that gold that we applied down. We want it to tone and then of course settle in the crevices. But we want to keep it more fluid. And back area there. This darker tone will give us the shading on that gold that we want to lay in. And when we come back through to highlight, we'll have built-in shadows. And the brown with the gold really makes it look like a natural gold. And I know it doesn't look like it now, but it will. It will as we do our highlights. Additionally, that separates it out from the beard quite a bit. And because these will be going to non-metallic metals, we'll highlight those up, just like we did down here, all the way up to whites. So those gold bits will be the pop, the highlight of this miniature. I think what I'm gonna do, I think I'm gonna stop the video here, and I'm going to seal the chest. I'm gonna go ahead and seal the golems so that we have something to work on while we're waiting to have paint dry. So we're gonna end this video here and let the paint dry and then come back to do highlights. All right, while sealing the chest and pack, we're prepping to, I realized that on the Mini, I missed the ring on the horn. So we're going to catch that up. And just the same process we did with the other gold trim on the helmet. Laying on some color. Again, this color is actually pretty thin out of the bottle, so take multiple coats. I just want to be really careful by that fur. I don't want to tag and get paint on anything that should not have paint, like I did with the helmet. But as I was doing the sealing on the pack, I had decided to go ahead and attach that pack on. Just the more fingering I do on it, the less chance I have to avoid any rubbing. So I'm just going to apply some super glue, and I know this is not in film, into the hollow. I'm going to give that a moment. Now I went a little heavy, and I don't want that pouring out, so I'm actually going to go in with just a piece of extra parchment paper, press it in there a couple times, make sure it's got good spread. Then I'm going to throw that away. I'm going to place the pack, which has been sealed, right in place. And then we've got to touch up that soft pack piece. I'm gonna make sure that parchment went into the trash. All right, good to go, good to go. So we're gonna let that dry and go back to that golden ring on the horn. This is the second coat of the gold. Now you can see still it does not completely cover up that gray. So it will require a third coat before we put the brown wash over top. I realize this step is definitely taking more time than I had initially planned. I figured in, again, hour we'd have this fellow all done, but not so much the case. Now while that's going, we're going to go back through and start highlighting onto the gold. And this is just some of the same gold. We're just following our regular highlighting process of building up nice thin layers. Of course, this gold we already know is pretty thin, so we don't have to do a whole ton for it. But this has a lot of rivets, kind of like sculpted into the helmet. So I want to try to leave some dark areas around them, especially as we build up the colors. And because this is nice and thin, it's not going to be super opaque, which really gives us the opportunity to build up those colored layers. and bring out the details in the sculpt. That back section there, we're going to follow like we did the gray shield portion. Have the highlight going to be center back. You can really see where that brown kind of settled in low points. But because the washes are thin, it's kind of what happens. They'll go into those crevices and just settle. Which is why washes are really nice to use. Rather than just going in and laying down shadows, you can utilize those washes to bring up the darkness in those shadows really easily, and then highlight from there. And then that gives us time for that previous layer on the horn wrap to dry. So we can go in and lay some more paint. Ooh, I got a little thick there. Now with that brown tone, you can start to see the variances as we lay in these golds. It gives it a little more depth. And by going with the brown, it settles that yellow of the gold. Because this is going to be a non-metallic metal, we want them to complement each other really well. And for gold, brown really does the trick. And then for this, the way the light plays on it, the areas we want to focus on are the edge and the crown, the highest point. So that's where we want the majority of the color to lay. So making sure we pick those out really, really well. And then of course the rivets. I'm keeping this kind of roughed out here and there with the brown showing so that it looks a little more hammered, I guess, because we do want it to look like it's worn, maybe seen some pretty heavy use in the field. Gotten banged around a bit. And just smaller and smaller areas as we go through. Again, kind of stippling those edges so that they have a little bit more blend in with the previous layer. And then you'll see as this dries, it blends even more and more with the previous layer. Of course, because they're tonally similar, that's kind of what we're wanting. Just nice, good, smooth blending and nice, even transition of color. And this one, on this back band, I'm going to change it a little bit. So if you remember on the silver, we had the lower and upper edges where the highlights went to give it that convex, or I guess concave feeling. On this one here, I'm going to do it the opposite. I'm going to continue to highlight to the center so that it's a little more convex to that lower shield part. And just trying to be very purposeful for where I put these colors, because as we highlight up, less and less will get applied So we've got to be very diligent in what gets paint for a good, smooth transition. I'm getting a low battery warning. So we may have to pause our progress here, charge up some batteries and come back to it. Let's try to get the horn band, the initial gold laid out. Yeah, see how thin that is, that you're still able to see through. This one here is just such a thin paint. It's a little more challenging than I had initially planned. But that's okay. We want to do it right. We want to do it right. And we'll do one more layer on the shield. A little bit on this upper lip. Okay, we're going to pause there and then come back to it once we've got some battery charges. Thanks for watching our video. We hope that you enjoyed it, and we'd love to have you subscribe. Feel free to hit that button if you care to get notifications for when we post new content. Leave your comments below and help us answer the question of where will your adventures take you. Enjoy.